Hello and welcome to day 3 of the 2020 EOW Virtual Conference. My name is Ray Judy and I'm one of the newer EOW board members, and I will be your moderator for this session. On behalf of EOW, I want to thank you for being with us today, and we hope that you are thoroughly enjoying the conference. May be a little biased in this opinion, but I think this is the greatest weatherization conference going anywhere, so we appreciate you being with us. A couple of beginning housekeeping notes. Questions for this session can be entered into the chat feature, and we will answer as many of those questions as possible. We may answer some of them through the session, but if not, then we will certainly do our best to answer as many of them as possible at the end. Also, be on the lookout near the end of the session. A link to submit a request for the BPI CEUs will be posted in the chat, so we want everyone that applies to be aware of that and to be looking for that. So if this is your first time joining us, the chat feature is located on the right side of your screen. So we want to welcome Paul Raymer as our speaker for this session this morning. Paul has been working with building science for more than 40 years. He has taught building science courses to diverse audiences, from home inspectors and weatherization specialists to architects and engineers. He is a senior technical specialist with ICF and the chief investigator for Heyoka Solutions and president of the Northeast Building Science Institute. He is the author of the Residential Ventilation Handbook, a novel entitled Recalculating Truth, Residential QCI Handbook, and has published articles in Northeast Sun, Smart Homeowner, and Home Energy. He was a member of the lead EA Technical Advisor Subcommittee, BPI Standards Technical Committee, and is a subcommittee chair for heating, cooling, and ventilation of the NREL SWS. He is a BPI envelope, building analyst, heating professional, AC heat pump, infiltration and duct leakage, and healthy home evaluator certified, as well as a certified HERS rater. He is an IREC assessor, IREC certified master trainer, a full member of ASHRAE, and the lead subject matter expert for the NREL IREC QCI microcondenser development project. So the session that you're viewing today is called Watch That Smell, Air Quality Discussion. So this session is based on the work Paul has been doing with the EPA for the Indoor Air Plus program, and we'll discuss the direct link between an energy efficient and a healthy home. So without any further delay, I will turn this session over to Paul.
Thanks, Ray. It's way too much stuff. Let me see if I can move us out of the way here. All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's early in the morning out there on the West Coast. It's almost lunchtime here in Massachusetts. And we're supposed to be in Austin, Texas. So one thing about this, we got people from all over the place and listening into these things. I have been doing this for a long time. My company's here on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and I've been working with fans and airflows and buildings since 1977. I thought that my first company was called Weather Energy Systems, which assumed that anything that changed could generate energy. And so weather is always changing. So I thought that'd be a great name for a company. I've been part of the ASHRAE 62.2 ventilation committee for 10 fun-filled years. And I've got a whole bunch of those BPI certifications, as Ray said. And I've been told that I really should get a life. It's kind of fun to say I wrote the book on that when people start talking about mechanical ventilation. Among other things, ventilation is the basis of IAQ or IEQ, indoor environmental quality. And that's what we're going to talk about today, along with a bunch of other things, nasty things, bunch of nasty pollutants with ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night. There's a lot of stuff in this session, a lot of technical and scary stuff, but also a lot of practical sense stuff that will help you, I hope, to appreciate what's going on in the air around you. The more you know, the better you can be at your job. And hang in there till the end, and I'm going to ask a question, and you can win a copy of this book. It's the least I could do. We've been tightening up houses for a couple of decades to save energy. I want to move some things around on my screen here so I can see what I'm doing. We've been tightening up houses to save energy, which is generally a good idea. We have been doing it to gain control of where the air is coming in and where it's leaking out. You want to smell the roses and not the garbage. We didn't expect to be trapped inside. We've been paying attention to the energy, but have only been paying cursory attention to indoor air or indoor environmental quality. We are now acknowledging that we're spending at least 90%, maybe 100% of our time in our houses. So if we breathe 3,000 gallons of air per day, it needs to be good air, clean air, not the air that's replete with all sorts of bad microbes. But we don't want to get rid of all the good microbes, the microbes that fight off the bad microbes. We bring all sorts of stuff in our homes. The stuff builds up and fills the attic and the basement, and the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds, the stinky stuff builds up as well. And so people buy air fresheners to cover up the smells. If you joined my session yesterday, you may have heard me go through this slide, but some of it's worth repeating. I'm not fond of air fresheners. They often contain lots of toxic chemicals. The toxic chemicals released by air fresheners, particularly those with pine, orange, and lemon scents, are known as volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. These are well-proven toxins, many of which have been linked to a range of diseases and conditions when being inhaled even in low concentrations over a long period of time. Mechanical ventilation can dilute the pollutants in the house, so why not just put good ventilation system in and let it run a lot, if not all of the time? The global market for these products is surging, but the smells don't get to the root or the cause of the problem. We're lucky that people are paying more attention to the health in our homes, and not just in special or extreme cases. BPI has the Healthy Home Evaluator certification for a number of years now. They've just added a Healthy Housing Principles certificate, and the EPA will be sending the Indoor Air Plus for existing homes certification out for public review in October. That's the program I've been working with. The HHP manual is very readable and well illustrated, and not loaded with a lot of incomprehensible technical jargon. Kevin Kennedy was the lead author, and he had a lot of great support authors. You can get this from BPI. So we wanted to get action levels for all these contaminants into the program, but unfortunately, most of the levels are for outdoor thresholds. Part of the problem is that people have different reactions to these contaminants. What might be critical to one person might have no effect on another. And the pollutants are not simple static things. They keep changing and are different in different parts of the house. But ideally, you would survey a house and look for all these things: arsenic, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde or HCHO, NOx, ozone, PCBs, and particularly PM 2.5 particles and radon. So you want to start with the occupants. Smell generally has a short perceived time. Smell is a sense located in the nasal cavities of mammals and relying on the olfactory nerves by which molecules born in a fluid such as air can be perceived, the olfactory sense. Occupants are probably the best diagnostic tool. They can't provide a documentable level, but they can relate symptoms and relative levels. Like, does it smell more today than it did yesterday? Did you cook fish last night? The outside vents are part of the nose of the house. Notice that dryer vent installed sideways, full of lint. I don't know how the louvers are going to work with it going sideways, but I once found a dollar bill stuck in the louvers of a dryer vent. You could assume that the lint filter in that dryer was not functioning very well. After talking with the occupant, a walk through the house can help you get a visual identification of the pollutants. It's like looking for clues in a mystery. What, where, why, when. I tell my students it's like CSI. With that in mind, the hazards can be prioritized and justified. Critters can get in lots of places, including ventilation systems. Don't attach ductwork to the fan with screws because they may interfere with the operation of the backdraft damper. And other obstacles like dead bats will also interfere with the airflow. Critters and scum will get into the ventilation system. This is a heat recovery ventilator, or HRV. The moisture in the drain pan can encourage the growth of mold. Moths, wasps, flies, and other insects can get sucked into the system. And it's important that ventilation systems such as this be located in a place where they can be serviced. The occupant is breathing this air. It kills me when installers put the HRV somewhere in the attic where people will never get to. What do you suppose is causing this staining on the ceiling? Looks like the heat from the bulbs in the chandelier. Well, that's causing the air movement, but what's in the air? Cigarette smoke and nicotine. This is the home of a heavy smoker. Those stains are going to be virtually impossible to remove, and there will be a third-hand smoke issue in this house for a very long time. Clothes dryers mechanically draw air from the house and blow the warm, moist, and lint-filled air back out to the outside. They commonly draw the air in from the bottom. So it's important not to surround the base of the dryer with junk like dirty clothes and other things. It's also important to keep the lint filter clean. I had to clean this one out with my Leatherman. Also note that as houses get tighter, clothes dryers may need to be supplied with direct makeup air, or the clothes will simply cook. Dryers can move up to 200 CFM. And if the house is tight, it's going to be hard to move 200 CFM out because it will be hard for 200 CFM of air to find its way in. In a tight house, the dryer can act like a small blower door. And it's important to prioritize the issues to be addressed. Something that's acute is a condition that needs immediate attention. It's extremely great or serious, crucial or critical, like a heart attack or a leaking water heater. Chronic is a condition that's continuing or occurring again and again for a long time, like a nagging backache. So you want to prioritize acute issues over chronic issues. Then you want to look at cost and easiest to address, because you might just be able to wear a mask in public, for example. If you know what the biggest health benefit is, do that next. And then the fastest health benefit, which will probably take more experience and training. These are some of the health impacts from moisture. Excess moisture is associated with an increased rate of respiratory disease. Most seriously, mold can trigger asthma attacks in sensitive individuals. They can also adversely affect immune system function. Note that mold needs liquid moisture to grow. It doesn't need very much, but it needs liquid moisture. Note that there are three main health problems related to moisture and mold: asthma, infections, and allergies. Symptoms for these health problems include cough, wheezing, shortness of breath, asthma attacks, irritation, and itching. But the house shouldn't be too dry either. Ideally, we want to keep the house between 40 and 60% relative humidity. That's the kind of range they keep the Mona Lisa in. And she's been doing all right for a couple of 100 years. But the concepts behind humidifiers and dehumidifiers are not well understood by occupants. They have to be maintained and controlled. The concern about sanitation problems centers on reducing exposure to hazards that can cause health impacts. The health impacts from all of the hazards noted here can be reduced by cleaning, but keep in mind that cleaning is just one part of a multi-intervention approach that is almost always needed. For example, you can clean residue from ETS from a house, but an additional intervention should be persuading the resident to smoke outside. Cleaning can help reduce pesticide residue, but implementing practices to manage pests by reducing their access to food and water is also a way to reduce the use of pesticides. These are the health impacts from environmental tobacco smoke, also known as ETS. Again, cleaning reduces the exposure to this contaminant. Most people should be very familiar with the health problems relating to what happens if they smoke, but may not know as much about second and third-hand smoke. Secondhand smoke occurs when someone uses and exhales tobacco products such as cigarettes, cigars, or pipes, and the smoke is then inhaled by involuntarily by others. Third-hand smoke is nicotine residue that remains on surfaces, including walls, doors, drapery, carpets, clothes, furniture, flooring material, books, and acoustic tiles in the ceiling. This pollutant can also be inhaled when it is re-emitted through dust in the air, and it can react with substances in the environment to create secondary pollutants on surfaces. Tobacco smoke contains more than 7,000 chemicals, including hundreds that are toxic and about 70 that can cause cancer. Since 1964, it's estimated that 2.5 million deaths are attributed in the US to health problems caused by exposure to secondhand smoke. In the US, secondhand smoke causes approximately 3,000 lung cancer deaths annually among non-smokers. tobacco residue remains in the area even after the smoker has left. This residue is referred to as third-hand smoke or residual smoke, and it poses health risks to those who are exposed. These are the health impacts for asthma from asthma and allergy triggers. Note that there is a difference between asthma symptoms and the development of asthma. Having asthma symptoms means an attack has been triggered and the individual is coughing, wheezing, or having shortness of breath. Developing asthma means a doctor has diagnosed an individual as having asthma. There is strong evidence that indoor mold can contribute to asthma development. The 2009 World Health Organization guidelines for indoor air quality on dampness and mold says that there is sufficient evidence of an association between dampness mold and asthma development. Now, that does not mean it is accurate to say that mold causes asthma development, simply that evidence shows it can contribute to asthma development. Mold also triggers asthma symptoms. There is also strong evidence that dust mites can contribute to asthma development. The 2000 Institute of Medicine report called Clearing the Air, Asthma and Indoor Air Exposures says that there is sufficient evidence of a causal relationship between dust mites and the development of asthma.
Paul?
Yes, sir.
We had one question that may kind of tie back into the secondhand smoke. But one of the question is, have you seen any data on secondhand vape or any data on vaping related to this as well?
That's a great question, and one I was thinking about this morning. But I haven't done any research on it. Just a cursory amateur's opinion on that is that the smoke from vaping has a similar kind of impact, but that's just off the cuff. I wish I could give you a better answer to it. I guess my primary answer is just don't do it. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Sure. All right, so the health impacts from pesticides are not a whole lot better. The Pesticide Safety Education Program at Cornell University's Cooperative Extension Program notes that the symptoms of pesticide poisoning are similar to those of other types of poisoning and other diseases. Heat exhaustion, food poisoning, asthma, and other illnesses are sometimes confused with pesticide poisoning. Just because a person has become ill after using or being around pesticides does not mean or does not offer proof that he is poisoned. Acute poisoning is the severe poisoning which occurs after exposure to a single dose of pesticides. The appearance of symptoms may be sudden and dramatic, or they may be delayed. Chronic poisoning is the poisoning which occurs as a result of repeated, small, non-lethal doses over a long period of time. Many symptoms may appear, such as nervousness, slowed reflexes, irritability, or a general decline in health. Some test animals are unable to reproduce normally after repeated exposure to pesticides. Mild poisoning or early symptoms of acute poisoning are headache, fatigue, weakness, dizziness, restlessness, nervousness, perspiration, nausea, diarrhea, loss of appetite, loss of weight, thirst, moodiness, soreness in joints, skin irritation, eye irritation, irritation of the nose and throat. Moderate poisoning or early symptoms of acute poisoning are nausea, diarrhea, excessive saliva, stomach cramps, excessive perspiration, trembling, no muscle coordination, muscle twitches, extreme weakness, mental confusion, blurred vision, difficulty in breathing, cough, rapid pulse, flush or yellow skin, and weeping. And then you get to the severe or acute poisoning: fever, intense thirst, increased rate of breathing, vomiting, uncontrollable muscle twitches, pinpoint pupils, convulsions, inability to breathe, and unconsciousness. So all of this tells me that if you can limit the use of pesticides, you might help a lot of things. These are the health impacts from lead. Cleaning and other maintenance tasks will reduce the exposure to lead, but always remember that there are other interventions that may be needed, e.g. safely removing any lead paint. And we'll talk some more about lead later on in this presentation. These are the health impacts from critters. Dust mites, cockroaches, and mice are all potent asthma triggers. Pests also spread infectious disease. Both cockroaches and rodents can carry dozens of infections, viruses, and even fungi. Mice are a reservoir for and can vector salmonella. Deer mice can vector hantavirus. Hantavirus initially causes flu-like symptoms and abdominal problems. Late symptoms include coughing and shortness of breath as the lungs fill with fluid. There's a mortality rate of 38% from the hantavirus. When applying insect repellents to children, read all the directions first. Do not apply over cuts, wounds, or irritated skin. Do not apply to the eyes or mouth or hands or directly on the face. Also, use just enough to cover the exposed skin or clothing, but don't use it under clothing. Many plants are poisonous and should not be found in houses or yards with small children. Occupants should learn which of their outdoor and indoor plants are poisonous and teach their children not to put plants in their mouths. It's a picture of ants in a sunny sliding door sill. Moisture that the ants need condenses on the glass. The ants don't usually cause allergic reactions, but pesticides sprayed on them might, as we just went through. Often the best solution is patience. Follow the ants as they carried food home and then destroy the nest. If you see a line of ants making its way through the house, follow it to determine its origination point. Ants can enter through a window, molding crevice, or even a crack in the floor. Keep food in tightly sealed containers or in the refrigerator. Food left anywhere else may attract more ants. Ants' food preference vary between carbohydrates, fat, and protein, and can change with the seasons and with the evolving needs and tastes of the colony. If one type of bait does not work, then try another. Get rid of trailing ants by vacuuming them up along with some cornstarch, causing them to suffocate. They can also be washed away with soap and water. Eliminate the scent of the trail by washing the area once the ants have been removed with soap and hot water. And then permanently seal the point of entry by caulking windows and cracks and weather stripping doors, stuff that we do to make houses tighter. For the best results, place baits along observed foraging trails. These are cockroaches on sticky traps. Only 3 of the traps are affected. In this case, it was a kitchen and bathroom, which is pretty typical. These traps are an effective way to monitor for cockroaches, but they won't kill them. It's not usual to capture more than 50 on a trap. And the traps are only like 5 cents a piece. So these are some of the impacts from inadequate ventilation. The hazard we're addressing here is volatile organic compounds, also known as VOCs. VOCs are chemical compounds that evaporate when exposed to the air. A couple of examples of VOCs are paint strippers and other solvents, wood varnish and air fresheners, but also pleasant smells like baking bread. The late gastronome James Beard exulted, "There is no smell in the world of food to equal the perfume of baking bread." However, part of that perfume is ethanol, a natural alcohol given off as yeast that metabolizes bread sugar during the fermentation that makes the dough rise. When the temperature of the baking bread reaches 174 degrees, the ethanol, a volatile organic compound, or VOCs, as the environmental wonks would say, is released into the air. Sunlight easily breaks down VOCs into simpler elements, including atoms of oxygen. They in turn contribute to the formation of ground level ozone, an ingredient of smog. Bakery emissions are in and of themselves a source of VOCs and subject to the provisions of the Clean Air Act. So from the Wonder Bread factory here in Natick to Mrs. Baird's bakeries in Fort Worth, Texas, large bakers across the country are being forced to buy catalytic oxidizers, 18,000-pound pickup-sized truck emission control devices for their ovens. Now, I hope I didn't totally ruin your day with that one. You may need to use quantitative measurement and sampling if you need to confirm that something is or is not a hazard. It may be that you can see, feel, hear, or smell a possible hazard, or the occupant reports an issue. Either way, you need to confirm whether there is a problem. Keep in mind that the quantitative measurement should be done in support of or to clarify visual qualitative findings. So let's look at some examples. First example, you don't see anything wrong with any of the gas appliances in the house, but the occupant reports symptoms that sound like carbon monoxide or CO poisoning. You collect as much information as you can by asking the occupants questions like, do the symptoms disappear when you go out of the house? Does it only happen in the morning? Do you close your bedroom door at night? You may come to a conclusion as to what's happening, but you need to support that conclusion with a quantitative measurement. The answer to this first example is yes, you do need to do a quantitative measurement. You need to measure if the CO level is above the actionable thresholds. And this is the primary reason that the level of CO in the house needs to be monitored throughout the building analysis. Be sure to make the connection with the HVAC system. Second example, let's say that you're conducting an assessment and it's very clear that the house has a substantial mold and moisture problem. You see that there is considerable mold on the interior basement walls. Well, you don't need to measure how much mold there is. I mean, you may need to measure it for remediation, but you don't need to quantify it for analysis. You could check the moisture problem with a moisture meter or sample the air on the surface mold, but you can see it. You might want to do sampling for other reasons, depending on the purposes of your assessment. So the answer to this second example is no, you don't need to do quantitative measurement. Third example, you observe a variety of surfaces in a home that are extremely damp, but you don't directly observe the classic spots indicating mold colonization. In some instances, a uniform, almost transparent fuzziness is just detectable above the surface. This is often not detected through observation, but is clearly represented in the results of samples collected in a damp room with these surface characteristics. There are simply times when moisture and mold damage is more hidden or of greater complexity. At those times, you should measure or sample to confirm or reject your hypothesis that there is a moisture issue. So the answer to this example is yes, you need to support your observation, your visual assessment with quantitative measurement. Fourth example, and the answer to this one is yes, you need to do quantitative measurement. This is a more complex situation, but not unusual. There are various triggers for allergy and asthma, so quantitative measurement can help the occupant to pinpoint the problem in his or her house. Using vacuum sampling to take a dust sample, you can send it to a lab and determine if the dust mite level in the house is above the health threshold. In other words, even if the occupant is keeping the house dust-free, he might actually not be doing quite enough. He may also have to address other things, like more regular washing of bedding, getting dust mite covers for his son's pillow and mattress, keeping the pets off the bed, getting rid of stuffed animals, and regulating the humidity level in the house. So if the answer to the first question is that quantitative measurement is required, then how do you choose the right tool to do the measuring? Choosing the tool you need depends, of course, on the purpose of the assessment. The purpose determines the data quality objectives you would have. Data quality objectives are the characteristics of the data you need. Validity and sensitivity are two of the characteristics that you need to think about. Here are a couple of examples. A smoke stick tells you which way air is flowing, but an anemometer tells you how fast the air is flowing in feet per minute, which can be converted to how much air is flowing or cubic feet per minute. A combustible gas leak detector gives an audible sound, but a combustible gas indicator provides a reading of the lower explosive limit of the gas present. Take essential tools with you to every assessment. Basic ones like a smoke stick or a pocket anemometer. They are low cost and provide some important determinations about things that are not easily observed. The first example here is to help diagnose the ventilation issue. Is there enough airflow to a bedroom? Now, just the word enough is quantitative. The first example notes that a smoke stick tells you which way the air is flowing, but an anemometer provides a more quantitative measurement. For the second example, a combustible gas leak detector gives an audible sound, but a gas indicator provides the concentration of a specific gas, e.g. methane. Methane is the largest single constituent of sewer gas and can cause headaches, nausea, dizziness, and other symptoms at low levels, and can cause death at high levels. A friend of mine was testing his testing a house, and his gas indicator indicated the presence of gas, but there were no gas appliances, nothing that used gas in the house. He discovered that the connections to the gas lines under the street that fed other utilities to the house were allowing a gas leak to flow into the house he was testing. It was a situation, whoops. It was a situation that was not caused, not by the book, but if he hadn't called the gas company and had them check it out, the whole block might have gone up, like you see in the news. On the other hand, these instruments will activate for dead rodents in the walls. You need to understand your test instruments and what they're telling you. Note, of course, that you will come into the situation with a hypothesis, but as you go through the assessment and talk to residents, you may have to revise your hypothesis if the situation is worse or better than you thought, or completely change it. We can divide quantitative measurement tools into three categories. You should take the basic tools with you to every assessment. They are low cost and provide some quick and important determinations about potential hazards that may not be easily observed. Then there are the more advanced measurement tools, some of which are quite familiar to energy auditors, like manometers or flow hoods, a multi-gas detector, or maybe even an infrared camera. Then there are the even more advanced tools and expensive tools, like a formaldehyde detector, carbon dioxide detector, ozone detector, nitrogen dioxide detector. These are familiar building auditor diagnostic tools, from the combustible gas detector for CAS testing to the manometers for blower door testing. The combustible gas detector will display the LEL, or lower explosive limit, for a gas like methane. It will alert you not only to the presence of methane, but also if the surroundings contain dangerous levels. If we were doing this live, I could pass the instruments around and we could turn them on and off and make them beep. Taking this a bit further, we have a moisture meter for a variety of situations, a smoke pencil for checking out drafts, a personal CO detector to keep the auditor safe, a thermal hygrometer for relative humidity, a small infrared thermometer for checking out cold and hot spots, places where moisture might condense, and a pocket anemometer for quantifying airflows. A combustible gas leak detector is used to find leaks in a gas line or the presence of gas in a house. A smoke stick provides a visual acknowledgement of an airflow. A CO detector indicates the presence and level of carbon monoxide. A thermal hygrometer measures the level of temperature and humidity and can calculate the dew point. We used to have a sling psychrometer, which was quite similar to that. And there used to be a question on the BPI analyst exam about what you use a sling psychrometer for. And it's basically to determine the dew points. An infrared thermometer can determine the cold and hot spots in a room, and a moisture meter. The other thing about a sling psychrometer, the answer really is psychrometric conditions. You want to look that up somewhere. And a moisture meter can be used to determine the percentage of moisture in a material like wood or drywall. So now IAPX is the EPA's program for indoor air in existing homes that we will be sending out for public review in October. And these are the contaminants that will be included in the IPX program when it gets sent out for public review. Asbestos, lead paint, carbon monoxide, combustible fuels, and ozone. But there are a lot of other contaminants that are not included here, but can be a source of concern in homes. Let's look deeper at some household pollutants. Wood in playgrounds used to be preserved with arsenic. Kids would track that into the house on their shoes. It can be measured with a particle counter, which can be used for other measurements as well. Mean levels in ambient air in the United States range from less than 1 to 3 nanograms per cubic meter in remote areas and 20 to 30 nanograms per cubic meters in urban areas. Asbestos is a mineral fiber that occurs in rocks and soil. Because of its fiber strength and heat resistance, asbestos has been used in a variety of building construction materials for insulation, such as a fire retardant. Asbestos has also been used in a wide range of manufactured goods, mostly in building materials like roofing shingles, ceiling and floor tiles, paper products, and asbestos cement products. The uses of asbestos are not banned. Most uses are not banned. Asbestos fibers may be released into the air by the disturbance of asbestos-containing materials during product use, demolition work, building or home maintenance, repair and remodeling. In general, exposure may occur only when the asbestos-containing material is disturbed or damaged in some way to release particles and fibers into the air. Asbestos may be found in attics and wall insulation, containing vermiculite, vinyl floor tiles and backing on vinyl sheet flooring and adhesives, roofing and siding shingles, textured paint and patching compounds used on walls and ceilings, walls and floors around wood-burning stoves protected with asbestos, paper or millboard or cement sheets, hot water or steam pipes coated with asbestos material or covered with asbestos blanket and tape, and oil and coal furnaces and door gaskets with asbestos insulation. Removal costs vary widely depending on surface circumstances. Removing a 10-foot section of asbestos pipe insulation could be $400 to $650. We thought I might start an old folks removing asbestos company so we could make a bunch of money, but not a good idea. Some contractors have a minimum fee of $1,500 to $3,000, no matter how small the job is. And a complete removal in a 1,500 square foot home with asbestos everywhere, walls, floors, ceiling, attic, roof, pipes, could be as high as $20,000 to $30,000. Have an independent inspector do an initial asbestos inspection. The White Lung Association says this costs from $400 to $800 for an average 1,500 square foot house, including lab fees. And reinspection work at the end of the project can be another $200 to $400. If lab work is done separately, a sample lab analysis averages $25 to $75. Asbestos is nasty stuff and not to be fooled around with. Here in the Northeast, there used to be a lot of steam heating systems and pipes are wrapped in asbestos insulation because it can stand the heat and keep the pipes from cooling and the steam from condensing before it arrives at the radiators. You want steam at the radiators, not lost in the middle of the pipe on its way there. Carbon monoxide is also nasty stuff. It's colorless and odorless and has about the same molecular weight as air. It is nothing like smoke that you can see and smell. So CO and smoke alarms really should not be combined in the same device. If your CO alarm goes off, leave the building. Do not take the batteries out or wave a dish towel at it. And CO can come from anything that burns. Formaldehyde is a strong smelling, colorless gas that you may be familiar with from dissecting a frog in biology class. It is used in making building materials and many household products. It's used in pressed wood products such as particle board, plywood, and fiberboard, glues and adhesives, permanent press fabrics, paper product coatings, and certain insulation materials. It is also used to make other chemicals. It is also a byproduct of combustion and certain other natural processes. Nitrogen dioxide, or NO2, is a gaseous air pollutant composed of nitrogen and oxygen and is one of a group of related gases called nitrogen oxides, or NOx. NO2 forms when fossil fuels such as coal, oil, gas, or diesel are burned at high temperatures. NO2 and other nitrogen oxides in the outdoor air contribute to the particle pollution and to the chemical reaction that makes ozone. It is one of 6 widespread air pollutants that have national air quality standards to limit them in the outdoor air. NO2 can also form outdoors when fossil fuel like wood or natural gas are burned. Nitrogen dioxide causes a range of harmful effects on the lungs, including increased inflammation of the airways, worsened cough and wheezing, reduced lung function, increased asthma attacks, and greater likelihood of emergency department and hospital admissions. New research warns that NO2 is likely to be a cause of asthma in children. Tropospheric, or ground level ozone, what we breathe, is formed primarily from photochemical reactions between 2 major classes of air pollutants: volatile organic compounds, the VOCs again, and nitrogen oxides, the NOx. These reactions have traditionally been viewed as depending upon the presence of heat and sunlight, resulting in higher ambient ozone concentrations in summer months. Ozone contributes to what we typically experience as smog or haze, which still occurs most frequently in the summertime, but can occur throughout the year in some southern or mountain regions. Ozone is a colorless to blue gas with a pungent odor. Exposure to ozone may cause headaches, coughing, dry throat, shortness of breath, a heavy feeling in the chest, and fluid in the lungs. Higher levels of exposure can lead to more severe symptoms. Chronic exposure may lead to asthma. Workers may be harmed from exposure to ozone. The level of exposure depends upon the dose, the duration, and the work being done. Fine particulate matter, as PM 2.5 is referred to by health agencies and pollution experts, possesses one attribute that makes them particularly dangerous. These particulates and whatever microscopic toxins they may be carrying with them can't just penetrate your lungs. They are also small enough to pass directly into your bloodstream. I put one of these nifty Breathe PM 2.5 monitors out by my kitchen, and it convinced my wife to use the range hood when she is cooking. When you can see the problem, you can do something about it. Let's look at these things in another way. This makes them look huge. This is a PM10 particle, and this is a red blood cell. This is a PM2.5 particle that we were just talking about. And this is a bacillus bacteria. And this is the SARS virus. You see my pointer? You see my pointer, Ray?
Yes, I do.
Cool. Thank you. I want to make sure you're still awake.
Now you're doing great.
The little breathe monitor changes color to match this index. In general, though, green is good. Purple and maroon are threatening. So let's check it. So this is a website called Air Now from the government. So right now, if I plug my zip code, which is 02540, whoops. It tells me the air is good in my neighborhood. So it's green, right? So now, Ray, what's your zip code?
46131.
Oops. Franklin, Indiana. Well, you're good too. So the PM 2.5 particles are just 43, and today's good and tomorrow's good. But you can type in someplace like California in here. And it gives you data for the whole state. We look at, some places the ozone level is pretty high. It's in the orange range. You can go down. I was looking at this morning, and some of these are in the dangerous area. There we go. San Bernardino. The ozone level is unhealthy. So this changes. This is moment to moment. So this changes throughout the day. So those will give you the scales, and that little moisture meter, that little breathe monitor changes color for these. So when it got to be red in the kitchen, or it went all the way up to maroon when my wife was cooking, it was pretty amazing. She really hated it when it got there. I don't want to convince her to stop cooking, but at least turn on the range hood. Acrolein, you may not be familiar with acrolein, but it's the simplest unsaturated aldehyde. It's a colorless liquid with a piercing, acrid smell. The smell of burnt fat is when cooking oil is heated to its smoke point, which causes the glycerol in the burning fat to break down into acrolein, like when French fries are cooked. It's produced industrially from propylene and mainly used as a biocide and a building block for other chemical compounds, such as the amino acid methionine. I haven't found an easy way to measure this stuff, but acrolein, along with formaldehyde and PM 2.5 particles, have the highest impact on our health in homes. And then there's radon. It comes mostly out of the rock in the ground, but even in the sandy soil where I live, radon varies from house to house. There is no safe level of radon, but the EPA has settled on a level of 4 picocuries per liter, 4 picocuries per liter as an action level. The least expensive way to measure it is with a canister that you open, expose to the air, close up, and send back to the company for analysis. That can be done over either a short-term or a long-term basis, or you can get one of these electronic monitors from Airthings. It's amazing. They sell these things at Home Depot for about $140. And you can watch how the radon in your home changes from day to day. The meter provides both long-term average and a short-term average, what's going on right now. And I found they are quite consistent with the canister approach. Radon is a gas formed by the natural decay of radium. Both radium and uranium are very common elements present in soil and rocks. Radon itself is not dangerous, but as it decays, the gas produces radiation in the form of microscopic particles called radon daughters that can cling to house dust or other airborne particles. Outdoors, radon is diluted quickly and poses little threat, but when it migrates into a building and accumulates to unsafe levels, it can become a health hazard. Whoops. I want to show you some radon daughters. As can be witnessed in a small cloud chamber, where radioactive energy from radon causes visible smoke trails, alpha particle energy releases that come from the breakdown of a radon atom are seen to fly at high speeds for up to about 2 inches. Shorter distances occur if they strike an object, such as a dust particle. 1 picocurie per liter of radon equals 2.2 of these alpha particle energy releases every minute within a liter of air. Within minutes, 2 more alpha particle releases occur from the breakdown, 2 different polonium atoms. Therefore, at 2 picocuries per liter, with about 3 liters of air in the average lung, about 40 alpha releases occur every minute. That's within the lungs. About 2/3 are from the polonium atoms that attach to the liquid lining of the lungs. At 2.7 picocuries per liter, which was recommended as a goal by the World Health Organization after pooling international epidemiology studies, about 54 alpha releases a minute occur within the lungs. At the EPA's action level of 4 picocuries per liter, it's about 80 alpha releases a minute within the lungs, or about 41 million alpha releases a year. These are the microscopic dents left by the alpha particles on plastic. This is even used as one way to measure radon concentrations. Now, our lungs do a remarkable job of protecting us, but just a single alpha particle strike is capable of causing lung cancer. Many factors can influence the rate and change of radon throughout the day and year. Some factors include depressurization from the wind, thermal bypasses like ceiling leaks and penetrations, light fixtures, cracks and openings, stack effect, the height of the home and the temperature differentials between the inside and the outside, vented appliances without a dedicated supply air, and frozen and wet soils. So radon is the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. Radon is estimated to cause 21,000 lung cancer deaths per year, according to the EPA's 2003 assessment of risks from radon in homes. The number of deaths from other causes on this graph are taken from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention 2005-2006 National Center for Injury Prevention and Control Report. Children have smaller lungs and therefore higher breathing rates. It used to be that children spent up to 70% more time indoors than adults on average. I think we're all stuck in the house about the same way. Radon-related lung cancer is correlated with a person's total lifelong exposure. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, a nationwide survey estimates that 1 in 5 schools has at least one classroom with a radon level that exceeds the recommended level of 4 picocuries per liter or higher. So if I had a kid that was going to school, I would take my radon meter in with me. And it just really emphasizes the fact that it's not that expensive to have your house tested. VOCs are volatile organic compounds. We've talked about them before. Measuring the TVOCs is interesting, but not necessarily useful because there are so many volatile organic compounds. And some paints are listed as having less SVOCs or semi-volatile organic compounds that release their VOCs more slowly. When my daughter, who was pregnant at the time, was painting her house, she asked me if she should get paints that had SVOCs. Well, the thing is that the VOCs in paint, the painters are protected with their masks while they're doing the work, but the SVOCs release more slowly over time. So I'm not sure how long they last in the air, or if I recommended that you use the SVOC paint, but it's going to take a while.
Paul, we have a question regarding the radon.
Okay.
You're ready for that. So the question is, do good quality respirator cartridges scrub radon?
No. No, you can't. I mean, unless you wear the mask all the time. I mean, it's there in the house, right? So smoking makes it worse. So stop smoking if you do in the house. But respirator cartridges are not there for radon. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that was just the information I have is on that question, but I'm wondering if maybe the question might be thinking about PPE as far as when you're doing work in the crawl space or in other areas of the house, possibly.
Well, that's probably a good idea anyway, right? I mean, monitoring the conditions as you're working in the house is a good idea. You can't carry all this stuff with you down there, but making sure your lungs are protected from all the other contaminants that are floating around. All right, so let's look at lead stuff. And this is where I should have you do this, right? In 1978, the federal government banned consumer uses of lead-containing paint, but some states banned it even earlier. Lead from paint, including lead-contaminated dust, is one of the most common causes of lead poisoning. Lead paint is still present in millions of homes, sometimes under layers of newer paint. There are these interesting and very expensive measurement tools that you can use to point it. These things are mostly over $10,000 for one of these puppies. Three levels of analysis for lead. Option one is the homeowner can purchase their own test kit It is simple and inexpensive, but it just indicates if LBP or lead-based paint is present. This does not reveal if there is a hazard, just if there is lead-based paint. Option 2 is more expensive. A homeowner can hire an EPA LBP inspector to conduct an LPB inspection, but that doesn't indicate what conditions of that lead are or how to mitigate it. This is a good option if the owner thinks there's not much chance of LBP hazard existing in their homes. And option 3 is to hire an EPA certified LBP risk assessor. The homeowner gets a whole house picture of where all the lead is in the home and also which conditions are hazardous and how to mitigate those conditions. This is a good option for someone who is guessing there is lead in the home. They can skip the inspection and get all the actionable information from one person. These are the health impacts on adults from lead-based paint: muscle and joint pain, high blood pressure, memory or concentration problems, and fertility and other sexual problems. All right, so what do you do with all the information you're gathered? Let's look at a problem. Jerome Hill lives in a single-family house in Truro, Mass. He's 32 and lives on his own. He's concerned about an interior wall in a hallway where recently he's had a problem with mold growth. He cleans it and paints it, but it keeps coming back. He bought the house a year ago, and it's only been in the last few months that mold has kept appearing. So what do you think? This was a house that I actually did. It was a house of a writer, sports writer for the Washington Post, who lived right in this beautiful house right on the water. And I brought all my test gear, and I should have brought a bottle of wine because I could have sat there. I was there all by myself and I could just play with things in the house. But this was her problem or his problem in this house. So I wanted to come up with a solution for him. So you can see the wall where the mold stains were painted over. Turns out Jerome installed a mini split air conditioner in his bedroom on the other side of the wall. And the wall is uninsulated, and the cold air in the bedroom side conducts through to the hallway, which drops the surface below the dew point, causing just enough condensation for mold to grow. So what was the solution? Insulate this interior wall. So his second case, an elderly couple, Angie and James Miller, live in a single family house in Idaho. Several years ago, they called a contractor because they thought the air in their house was very dry and caused severely dry skin and dry nasal passages. So in this case, the symptom was the dry air in the house, but the Band-Aid solution was to put a humidifier in. But did that really address the cause of the problem? So there's a process called the 5 whys. It uses countermeasures rather than solutions. A countermeasure is an action or set of action that seeks to prevent the problem arising again, while a solution just seeks to deal with the situation. As such, countermeasures are more robust and are more likely to prevent the problem from recurring. It's simply a series of 5 questions to drill down to the actual cause of the problem. Just the way a curious child does each time you ask why, look for an answer that is grounded in fact. It must be an account of things that have actually happened, not events that might have happened. This prevents the 5 whys from becoming just a process of deductive reasoning, which can generate a number of possible causes and sometimes create more confusion. So the house is too dry. Why? I don't know. There's not enough humidity. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's the heating system. Why? The heating system is trying to keep the house warm. Why? Cold air is coming in from the outside. Why? Because the house is too leaky. It has too many holes in it. So if the contractor had drilled down through the 5 whys, he could have figured out that a humidifier was the last thing he should have done. He should have gotten the house air sealed first. Did the contractor start by diagnosing the cause of the problem, or go right to the most immediate magic box solution, the humidifier? Remember, a house is a system. One thing leads to another. If you do something into a house, there is going to be another result somewhere else. And you want to try to figure out what is going on before you start making any changes. But he didn't diagnose the problem, diagnose the cause of the problem. He just added a humidifier to add moisture to the air. Note that these things need to be maintained or they will grow mold themselves. The result was that after a couple of years, there was moisture dripping out of the soffit, running out of the wall outlets, staining the ceiling, and creating mold colonies on the underside of the roof deck. When you raise the temperature of cold, humid air, like if it's snowing outside, the relative humidity goes down. So in a cold climate, air leaking from the outside will dry out in the warm interior of the house, no matter what type of heating system. The lawyers had a field day with this one. So just as the occupants are the primary diagnostic tool, they are why you are doing this analysis, and they need to understand what's going on. But remember, you know much more information than they need. Don't drown them in technical jargon. This is Joe Madash's assortment of IAQ trend indicator equipment. Lots of stuff to look at lots of things. You just have to decide what to do with all that information. You don't want to toast the homeowner's brains by telling them about how horrible the air is in their home. You definitely don't want to walk around with your fancy test equipment beeping and whistling and gasp occasionally at something that you see. This is a summary graph of all that equipment with costs and capabilities. And as you can see, there are lots of these multifunction monitors that provide a great deal of information. The more you learn about what all this stuff means, the more informed decisions you can make. And remember the law of the instrument. When the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. This AirThinks device will also provide lots of information and data. The trick is to connect the change in a household condition with a household event. The power consumption goes up with the Christmas lights when they get turned on. The PM 2.5 particles increase when the chef is frying fish. So turn the range hood on. So I said it before, the house is a system, and systems are complex. People are systems too. And when people are in houses, the systems connect and interact. They turn things on and off. They cook and they sing and they sneeze. I once heard a lecture about why the dinosaurs went extinct. And the concept was that the human brain to brawn is pretty good. But when you put the little small brain inside the huge body of a dinosaur, they just went extinct. And when you put a person in a car, the brain to brawn is about the same as the dinosaur. Babies crawl around on the floor and interact with the dust and other stuff they find there. That's my grandson. And the bottom line of why we do all this stuff, we want to make our homes healthy and safe for those we love. So I'm sorry if I loaded you down with a lot of scary stuff. Try to stay healthy. So my question is, who will be the first person to enter the EPA radon action level in the chat? Thank you so much for listening, and breathe easy.
Okay, Paul, while they're working on that question and entering their answers, there was another question going back to the radon discussion. It says, if I'm
Okay.
working in a different crawl space every day, what PPE do I use to protect myself from radon?
Well, I think before you go into the crawl space, you should probably measure the radon level if you can with one of those little electronic meters. I mean, you could leave it there for a little bit of time, but before you go in there, you want to make sure that it's a safe place to be, right? You're measuring the explosive gases and carbon monoxide and all those other things. And so before you go into the crawl space, you probably want to make sure that it's safe. I'm not sure that there's masks. I'll have to look that up for you, but I'm not sure that there are masks that can protect you from radon levels.
Okay.
Good
A
question.
question that came to me while we were going through this. It seems like one of the things, especially early on in COVID, when everyone was being required to stay home and stay in, that the one place that was really busy was all the box stores because everybody decided they would get to their honey-do list and start fixing up their house. Is there any kind of information yet on as far as the increased risk of people doing that maybe not have been aware of the lead-based paint issues or certainly of radon or anything like that? I don't know if anyone's looking at that, or maybe it's just an opinion question for you. If you think we'll see some um, indirect effects of COVID just from people being in their house and trying to take care of things themselves.
Yeah. I mean, there's masses of information out there. ASHRAE and the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control, all those people have tons of information about COVID stuff. One of my personal concerns is the hand sanitizer stuff because of the fact that it kills all the microbes, not just the bad microbes. And so I'm wondering, if we're going to see down the road something that indirectly causes us problems. There's some great books out now. I mean, Robert Dunn's Never Home Alone book is absolutely fascinating about that stuff. There's another from a book called Healthy Buildings from a professor at the Harvard School of Public Health who talks about how productivity levels are better when the buildings are healthier. So if you want to learn more about it, there's a stuff. You could read forever.
Yeah, thank you for chiming in on that. I think they'll be doing COVID related studies for years to come. And I really think there may be a place for weatherization to be a part of that. If we could use some of the extra funding, should it come across, or things like that, um, to be able to um, see the differences of what people notice by being in their houses more, and just if they have reached out to try to have people find out, just kind of to the title of your session, what's that smell, makes me wonder if people have been picking up on that any during this time of being in their houses more.
Yeah, yeah, I think I mean, there's definitely going to be all sorts of studies and things coming out about those. I mean, they're all that little teeny particle. So it's pretty amazing what we're going to be looking at, especially since those particles are so small and they carry this stuff on them, which is a scary thing. Um, so, but we're just learning. There's always more to learn.
Yeah, and this is going to give us an opportunity to not only learn more to prove, but to also prove the worth of organizations that understand building science and can kind of take things to the next level. While we've kind of got a pause here, I do want to remind everyone to be looking for the link in the chat to be able to request the BPI CEUs. If you have not done that yet, it's my understanding that that will be provided. Um, a couple other reminders here. If you have some other questions, you can continue to type those into the chat. And then just a couple other reminders. Please remember to view the other sessions in the pre-recorded video library. And remember that those will be available for 9 months. But, being on the live sessions the last few days may spark your interest enough that you want to go ahead and look at those sooner than that. So just want to make sure we remind everybody about those possibilities. And any other thoughts that you would like to add, Paul? We've got about 4 minutes left, so there's a little bit of time there.
Well, one of the things, Ray, I'm really glad to be seeing is that for a long, when I first got into this industry, everybody was talking about solar heated houses, passive solar design. And then we got moved from that to making them more energy efficient. And we've been spending tremendous amount of time learning about how to make them more energy efficient. Um, and I think that what we really need to do is tie in the health issues with the energy efficiency issues. And I think we need to, it's sort of like the pendulum is swung way over into the super tight houses like the Fias houses. And those things, you practically have to open the front door to close a window. But we need to, I think, back off a little bit and sort of balance between tight energy efficient houses and the connection to the outdoors.
Absolutely. And again, I think what COVID may do for us and the interest that Congress still has in the program, it may open that door for us to get closer to making that connection between energy efficiency and the healthfulness or the healthiness of the home that maybe was a little bit harder to make before. So, I'm hoping that we're all not getting so caught up into the negatives and the problems of COVID that we lose sight of some of the ways that it may help us moving forward. So I think your session has done a great job of helping us start thinking, start thinking down that road a little bit. Certainly, before we want to run out of time, we want to thank you, Paul, for another great session. But really want to thank you for being with us through the conference this week and for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your experience. And appreciate all the time that you've taken to prepare to be a part of the conference this week. So I'm sure
Thank you,
everyone
Ray.
that's been I'm sure it's everyone's been a part of it will benefit a lot from the information you shared.
I appreciate it. This is a great conference. I love this conference.
It is. It has been a new experience, and doing this virtually, but that we talked a little bit before the session started that one of the great things about one of the benefits of it being virtual, is that we've had the opportunity for a lot more people to attend that perhaps otherwise wouldn't have been able to because of not having the travel expense and things of that nature. So we are hoping that the information that is being shared this week will spread abroad and really help the Weatherization Network wherever the work is being done. So we um, we understand and appreciate that. So I have a chat note here that says people would like to know um, who won, and it looks like um, okay. I don't see a last. I don't see a last name, so we'll see here just a minute. Make sure that the name that I saw up earlier is the one that we need to announce.
Glad there's a winner. I mean, somebody was paying attention.
Yes, yes, there is. Okay, so it looks like Dennis W was the winner of the book. So we don't have a last name, but he was the first one to get in with the correct answer. So congratulations, and glad that folks are aware of that and were listening and picked that up. I noticed, of course, I knew the question was coming. I noticed, Paul, that you mentioned it. You mentioned that number, uh, really stressed that and mentioned it even an extra time there when you were at that slide. So glad that
Yeah,
individuals were able to pick up on that
great.
and bring that out. So that'd be very helpful if they ever have their own home tested as well. So um, glad, and we appreciate you making those books available.
My pleasure.
Okay. So I think we are getting pretty close. We certainly want to thank everyone for listening in to the session, not only this session but all the live sessions that we have done so far. Certainly, I believe there's at least one more session left for us today, and it will be the EOW Technical Issues Peer Exchange. And so I'm sure that there's going to be issues discussed during that session that will be of interest to everybody that's been a part of this conference. And so we want to certainly encourage you to take a part of that as well. And so if there's not any other comments on um, from the chat or from Paul, it looks like we'll be able to wrap this session up. So thanks again, everyone, for being with us. And thank you, Paul, for being with us as well.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Mark.